As leaders grapple with big questions about the future of Jewish community and Jewish life, I am honored to bring together some of the finest minds and leading thinkers on what the future might look like and what we need to do to get there. We can't wait around and hope for the best. We have to create our own future because the future is starting now. Hello, my friends. This week, I'm honored to welcome Rabbi Cherie Koller-Fox. Rabbi Cherie Koller-Fox is well known in the Boston area and by me for many, many years and beyond. She was ordained by the Academy for Jewish Religion in New York, my alma mater. She has served as rabbi at Congregation Eitz Chaim in Cambridge, Temple Emmanuel of Marlborough. I was in Marlborough also, actually. Newton Wellesley Hospital, and Beth Israel Hospital. She is also the interim president of the Academy for Jewish Religion and is the founder and national chair for the Coalition for the Advancement of Jewish Education. Cherie served as the chair of New Cage conferences in 2010 to 2016. Rabbi Koller-Fox is a leading thinker in advancing Jewish education for children, families, and adults, and I am so honored to welcome you. Hi, Rabbi Koller-Fox. How are you?
Hi, David. How are you doing?
Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. It is so good to talk to you. I have so many questions that you have prompted within me and that I have just been dying to ask you. But let me just start with, how are you? How have you been faring? What have you been doing over the past 2 years? Are you New Cage and New Cage only, or doing other things as well?
I'm basically working on New Cage. It's been a big project over the past 2 years. It's taken a lot of time, and that's basically what I've been doing.
I'm curious, when you picked up that mantle, which it's not as if there were other people in line to pick it up. Cage had sort of closed, and then it seemed to an outsider like you came along and said, you know what, we can't let this go. We have to have something else to fill that there was a real void there that you saw. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So my dear friend Jerry Benjamin of blessed memory and I founded Cage when we were in our early 20s, and it grew and it prospered for 34 years, I think 35. And then long after we were not in the middle of it anymore, it went bankrupt. And we had a conversation. We said, do we think the world would be better off with it or without it? And we decided it would be better off with it. And we decided it had to be easier to do it the second time when we were well established in our careers and we knew what we were doing. We knew how to raise money. We knew everybody, than it was the first time. But oh no, it was actually,
Oh, really?
Oh no, it was much harder the second time around.
Why do you think that was?
Because the field has changed. The field has less people working multiple jobs, meaning less full-time people. So the numbers are smaller, and so they have jobs that they go to and don't have a week to take off to go to a conference. And less full-time jobs and less synagogues believing that professional development is their responsibility, their fiscal responsibility. So it's made it harder and harder. And also foundations today are more likely to want to do their own jobs, their own things, than to support what we're doing.
Yeah.
So that all those things made it much harder.
And I imagine that over the past 2 years, you all have had to shift yet again. I'm curious, how has New Cage sort of been responding to the changing dynamic back when you started, as you were just describing, but also now through today, the changing dynamic and landscape of Jewish education?
So this has been quite an adventure because I believe New Cage was the first one that had to decide what to do and to do it in terms of, are we going to have a conference that's live? Are we going to have to do it online? And the answer was, let's do it online. And then we said, well, are people going to want to sit in front of their computers for 3 days? They'd never want to do that. Of course, we didn't know the answer to those questions. So we decided to do a summer of New Cage, and it started out being, a little bit every day, and quickly those time periods filled up, and we ended up doing an entire month from morning till night of conference, and we had 1,400 participants,
Whoa.
the largest conference that we've ever had, because people had such a need to, well, to have something to do, for one thing, right?
And
They
accessibility, I imagine, also. They didn't have to get on a
accessibility,
plane. Yeah.
right? They could do that, but also there was so much they had to learn as they began to pivot. So, and what we discovered was, well, we're not limited to a conference in the summertime. So, as you know, we started doing conferences every month, and having parties and doing study things, and just really accompanying the educators along this road that we were all going on. And you would think maybe now it's clearer, but we still are trying to figure out whether, are people going to want to get on an airplane and fly across country this summer? What are we going to do?
Yeah.
So this has been a constant, trying to respond to the crisis that's happening, and to support the educators who are working so hard to make it work.
I have to tell you that that pivot that you did, moving from a conference to a summer of learning, was so ahead of the pack. And here's what I mean.
Yeah,
I take part in a lot of different, they call them virtual event or virtual production workshops. And some of the people that I respect most talk about how painful having a 1-day conference with concurrent sessions, or a 2-day conference with concurrent sessions, because what that fundamentally means is that I don't get to go to everything I want to get to go to. But by spreading it out like you did, by having a summer of learning, then it frees me up to really have access to all of the deep learning that I know will help me grow. And I don't think a lot of folks they're still thinking about, we have to jam pack it into 2 or 3 days. And you
yeah,
have just grasped
yeah.
this moment.
We did. We hit it. We hit it right, and we couldn't have known that. We could have just as
Right.
easily have gotten it wrong. But what we did is we were live for a month, and then people could access the recordings for a month, and we were shocked, I have to say, to see how many people spent the whole next month trying to get every single recording in, and there were hundreds of them. The conference was, I don't know, maybe 250 sessions of one kind or another.
That's amazing. I wonder if do you think that that experience and the way New Cage sort of shifted, is there something for us who are on the ground doing the education with children, with adults, with families? Is that something that we should learn from? I guess what I'm really asking is, where do you see hybrid learning, online learning, the models that you've created? How do you see that playing out in synagogue and communal life?
Well, I think it's a bit of a conundrum right now, because one of the things we value so highly in Jewish education is relationships
Yes.
and time, those two things. So we have to ask ourselves at all times, how is this change going to help how is it going to affect relationships, and how is it going to affect time? So, for example, there are some schools now who are having in-person school on Sunday, and they're having Hebrew school, whatever they call it, during the week. And then, so you see the kids half as often, and they see each other half as often. So the real question is, what are you doing in your community to make up for the difference? Now, if you are doing once online during the week and once on in person on a Sunday or a Saturday, then let's say on top of that you're doing one-on-one Hebrew lessons. That's adding to the time, and I think that's a good idea.
That's what we've done. We've brought in, we did a lot of one-on-one or small group sort of chavruta study when we were forced to be apart. And what we've learned is that that's actually really powerful.
Yeah, that's
Is
better.
that, yeah, a short amount of time with a child, for example, in a one-on-one or two-on-one setting is oftentimes far more powerful than an hour with them in a group setting.
Right. But now what are we going to do? So some synagogues have cut out the middle day and just had the one-on-one tutoring. So instead of the sort of pathetic 4 hours, 3 hours, 2 hours that they used to have, they have even less now. And that can't be good. I don't
Yeah.
know all the reasons why it can't be good, but it just can't be good. It's going in the
Feels like it
wrong
can't be
direction.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to ask, well, what could we do to add to the time when we're together? If in fact the one-on-one Hebrew is better, then we should keep it. But what do we do about the time when the kids are meeting each other and hanging out together, which is so important in creating community? And what about the
Right.
parents? And if we only have 30 Sundays, are we really going to give up 8 or 9 of them to family education when that's really all we've got? So we have to be thinking of time. Time is really important. I mean, services actually there seems to be some positives of doing them online, as well as the negatives. So again, it's the same question. How are we going to make those services online important to people and accessible to people? They could go to a service before dinner and have dinner at a reasonable hour on Friday night, for example. But how do we then create uh, other ways of interaction, Bible study groups or just social groups? How do we do that? And I think those questions really haven't been solved as of yet.
You are the the queen, the mother of family education,
One of them.
and one of them. You are my how's that? You're
Yes.
my teacher of family education.
Thank you, Dave.
I wonder. You were just talking about parents. How has the field, forgetting the digital aspect of it, which we can come to, but I'm curious how the field of family education has changed over the past 20 or 30 years since it, at least to my recollection, it became the thing in Jewish education.
So when I started family education, I was surprised by it. It wasn't the first innovative thing I'd done. I did open classroom, which I thought sort of mimicked what Jewish community was like. And when I brought it to teach others, it didn't go over too well. It required a lot of time and effort and space and things that people weren't really ready to do in Jewish education. So when I started doing family education, and I was so surprised by how powerful it was, I waited a number of years before I started teaching it to other people. I really wanted it to be successful. And I developed a method of doing it and a method of teaching it, and then I started teaching it. And there were a few other people at the same time who came to the same conclusions and also uh, started teaching and doing family education. And then you're right, it became the thing. And in Jewish education, we have to be aware of or wary of the thing because it often ends up in the closet. And I feel like family education to some extent has ended up in the closet. I think everyone is doing some of it, but they're doing it without a theory and without models and without a practice and a plan. And so it's like throwing it against the wall. They're asking themselves, "Oh my gosh, it's 4 weeks till Hanukkah. What should we do?" Instead of, "How does this piece fit in with all of our other family education pieces? What are our goals? What are we hoping for the parents to emerge from this experience with? What are we hoping for the kids to emerge from this experience with?" And then the money dried up. So instead of hiring somebody to do family education, and really it is and can be a full-time job, even in a congregation of that's not super large, because there's no end to what you could be doing. You could work with young families. You could work with elders. You could work with whole families. You could strengthen life cycle events. There's a lot you could do besides what we're doing in family education. So once the money dried up, then this job reverted back, for the most part, back to the educational director, who's already stressed in terms of time and responsibilities. So I'm trying to bring it back because I think
Yeah,
it's really important.
and you were just saying the educational director who's sort of stressed for time and resources. I imagine, I'm guessing, actually I don't know this, that many full-time, what used to be full-time educational positions for educational directors, in addition to family educators, are now part-time as synagogues have gotten smaller, as budgets have maybe gotten smaller. And so there's not only do educators not have the time or the capacity to do it, but it's not, synagogues for whatever reason seems to have, they never embraced family education, I think, as a core part of their mission. It was always, this is the neat new way to engage families, but it never, for whatever reason, never sunk in with a lot of places as this is what we have to be doing. This is the essential ingredient.
Yeah, I think when I started thinking about family education, I was both the rabbi and the educator in my synagogue. And I think that I might have been mistaken about which one of us was doing family education. I think I thought it was the educator, and in reality, it was the rabbi. And I think that if rabbis understood that family education was actually their responsibility, and I don't mean the nitty-gritty of it, they would certainly need help, but in terms of directing it, thinking about it, I think it would be different. But family education, I call it like being a family rabbi, because a principal will look at a school by classrooms. So when they think of family education, they often think about, what am I going to do for the first grade families this year? Whereas to me, a family is the parents, the children, grandparents, all the other family members, odd and strange family members that we have now as part of our extended families. And that thinking about how a family goes through their Jewish experience of a lifetime of Jewish experience. What happens when they get married? What happens when the baby is born? What happens as the children move into the school and as they become bar bat mitzvah and there's a death in the family? All of those things are the key elements of family education. And therefore, I think they belong in the realm of the rabbi. And if we saw it that way, I think it would be different.
I have a theory to run by you, and I'm curious what you think about this. It just dawned on me as you were speaking. You know, I think a lot of us wish that we were the kind of person who could think of Zoom before Zoom became necessary, right? We all sort of wish that we thought of the big idea that no one ever thought of, and no one really realized how important it was until it became fundamental. And it seems to me that one of the things that we've done to ourselves in the Jewish world is by creating religious schools, we've said to families, give us your children and give us the responsibility to teach your children. We've sort of stripped that away from parents in some ways, so much so that many educational Jewish educators I hear, we've for years we've been moaning and groaning about how drive-through Hebrews, how parents just drop their kids off, and here we are 2 years ago when religious schools had to close, and all of a sudden, not only did the parents find themselves responsible for the English and math and science and social studies from the regular school, but now all of a sudden, any Jewish education fell in their lap as well. We certainly did everything that we could to support them. We went on Zoom, but in much the same way that parents found themselves responsible for a whole slew of educational things from the secular world, they also found themselves burdened, or I don't mean burdened in a negative way. They also found themselves responsible for those in the Jewish world. And we had stripped them of that sense of responsibility, and we had also not done a very good job of equipping them to be their children's best teachers. Is that a failing that, had we embraced family education, our parents would have been better prepared to lift up that responsibility?
It depends, but it's very sad to hear you say that, because when we were kids, and I'm talking about me, when I was a child, they literally said, drop your kid off at Hebrew school and we will make them Jewish and they will marry somebody Jewish. They literally said that. And when we came up, the reason that family education became a thing for us is because we said, that's completely wrong. The parents are our partners. Actually, we should have said, we're the parents' partners. And there's no possible way that, no matter what we say, that that's ever true, that it's not like that. It's 100% never true. I remember one family in my community where the mother passed away, and the daughter had gotten very involved in the synagogue and in Jewish things, but the mother was definitely not involved in anything. And she said, I don't know if I'd be honoring my mother more if I said Kaddish for her or if I didn't say Kaddish for her. In other words, what you learn from your parents about Judaism is the most important thing. What you do at your house with your family is the most important thing. And what you do in the synagogue is the secondary thing. So everybody in Jewish education who says, well, let's do Friday night services and dinner at the synagogue. Let's have these Friday night dinners, and then everybody will go home and do dinner at their house because it was so nice here at the synagogue. Well, that's completely wrong. That never happened, never will happen. Or people say, let's teach the children and they'll lead the parents. That also rarely happens. Sometimes there's a child who's very enthusiastic and the parent will want to become a part of that, but that is rare. It's much more likely that the parents are the ones leading the way, that the grandparents are the ones inspiring what's happening. So as long as we think like that, and as long as we use Jewish education like that, we're completely missing the mark. So we're completely missing the mark. So for example, let's take something really simple like Hanukkah coming up any day now. I understand it's already Kislev. So if a family wants to celebrate Hanukkah, first of all, they need to own a menorah. Now you can send one home. That's fine. That's probably a good thing to do. But if they don't have a menorah, obviously they're nowhere. Then they need to have candles. So you can send those home also. Or you can send home a note telling them where they're available in their neighborhood. But if they don't know what to do with the menorah, the parents, if they don't know which side, they sort of know it goes from one side to the other, but if they don't know which side, if they don't know how many candles to light what day, it's not going to happen. They're not going to want to be stupid in front of their own children. And then if all they know is how to light candles, it's going to be really a short Hanukkah. So then they go and they'll buy presents, which is much more a Christmas thing than a Hanukkah thing. And if they and what we can do is we can teach them recipes, we can teach them songs, not just the children. We can teach the parents the songs and the recipes. And we can teach them stories, and we can suggest books, and we can have classes for adults about how to light candles. And by the way, Zoom is perfect for that, better than anything we could have done in person. And you can have just those parents who want to learn how to do that. And maybe there are more advanced things. And you do an adult class on the story of Hanukkah, the history of Hanukkah, which is not what we're telling the children. Not sure why not. We should do that too, but okay. So the more the parent knows and likes Hanukkah, the more they want to make decorations for their house, or the more they want to learn more about it, the more likely Hanukkah is going to be a thing in their house. And if the kid comes home with a song that a parent doesn't know, they're not going to know it well enough, most likely, to sing it by themselves. And if they do sing it by themselves, where's the fun in that? So unless the parents and the children know what to do at home, away from you, you haven't done your job. Yes, the child needs to know the blessing, but the parents need to know the blessings also. And we can do that. And we can do that over time, because even with a family that has two children who comes in third grade and leaves in seventh grade of the second child, you have 9 full years of a family in your community that isn't that committed. And you have 9 full years to make them committed enough to stay, intertwined with the community enough to stay. And you have 9 years to give them 9 songs that they can sing on Hanukkah. So if the first year they were singing one song together, by the 9th year they should be singing 9 songs that they know and love and consider part of their family's ritual, not your synagogue's. So a lot of times people just want to bring people into the synagogue. I just want to add one thing, which is the funny thing about this zooming into the home was you couldn't ignore the parents. The parents were there. You couldn't ignore the home. You couldn't help but see the Christmas tree that was there. You couldn't help but watch what the child was eating. You couldn't help but get a real picture of how involved or caring the family was because of how they reacted to what you were doing. And almost no schools took advantage of the fact that they could have been teaching the parents along with the kids in Zoom, or the parents and the kids in Zoom. So that's the importance of family education, and that's what we need to turn in that direction.
I, the way you just described that really resonated with me. When you said, you have 9 years with this relatively unengaged family. You have 9 years, and it made me think about how often I have kvetched that families leave after 7th grade. Oh, they don't care. It's unimportant. It's somehow it's always their fault. Somehow it's always their fault, right?
It's always our fault, by the way.
Yeah, but I had 4 years, 7 years. Now I had years to do something about that, to engage that family, to build a relationship with that family.
And to build relationships among families.
Yes.
Because that's really why people stay, is because they have friends. This has become part of their friendship, I don't know, their place where they go for friendship.
Yeah.
And again, when I was a child, they had a New Year's party at my synagogue because I don't think Jews went out to restaurants on New Year's. They came to the synagogue for a New Year's party. That doesn't happen anymore. People have friends that are not Jewish. People have spouses that are not Jewish. It's not about that anymore. Now it has to be on purpose building community, on purpose giving people the tools that they need to be the Jewish parents to their own children, and to learn more and more and more themselves about what to do and how to do it. Want another example of just another quick example?
Yeah, please.
So it turns out that there are many family events, many life cycle events, besides the ones that we know. And one of the ones that I find most interesting is the year that the grandmother says, that was my last Passover. That was too much work. I can't do it again. Next year, you're going to do it. So that's a life cycle event that happens in every family. And at that point, all of a sudden, the new host family, the next generation, has a need to know about Passover, about food, about whatever level of kashrut they want to do, about a Haggadah for their family, about how to conduct it, about what to do. And they have a need to know. So if you do a workshop of even a month before Passover, those people in that life cycle event will flock to you. They'll come every day if you want them to, because they need to know. And then the next year, so they try it, then it doesn't go too well. The next year, they come back to you again. And now they have a better idea of what they need to know, so they're more focused. And then the third year, they come back again and realize that they know what to do and how to do it for their family. And that's the end of opening, that opening. So you're constantly looking for those kinds of openings, for family openings, for holiday openings, life cycle openings, and then mitzvot openings. You know, like where is the mitzvah that a family can relate to? So I think the first one is tzedakah, because I think that's one that most of them are already doing. They just don't know it's a mitzvah, right? So your job there is to label it and to give people opportunities to do it and to do it with their children. So there's a lot of things that you can do to empower and to support families that are much more important than the things that we are doing now. And it may be that Zoom is helpful in that.
Do you feel like there's an appetite amongst young parents for that kind of ongoing learning?
Yes, because they want to do things with their kids. They're attracted, as young parents, they want to be in the classroom with their kids. They can't always do that at school. It's not something that is, I don't, maybe it should be there more also. But for example, if we move school away from the weekend, as some schools are doing, you don't have an easy access to the parents. So yes, they want to do things with their kids, but when they come to do things with their kids, you also need to take them away from the kids and teach them on an adult level. You don't want to just have them sitting in the back watching little kids sing songs. You're really trying to teach them. So you're trying to create a plan for the family from birth through adulthood. That should be our job as Jewish educators.
I don't remember if I learned this from you, but I distinctly remember, and what you just said sparked this in me, that a family service is not a children's service to which parents are invited. That a family service is a unique experience that nurtures not only the children, but the parents, the adults that are there also.
Right, so what you want to do in a family service is you want to give the parents an opportunity to bless their children and other forms of interaction like that. I mean, it's really nice when the rabbi blesses everybody. I like to do it. But it's nothing like when a parent blesses a child.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it, So the service needs to teach everybody. Nobody should ever go to a service without learning something about it. So they shouldn't ever have gone to 50 years of high holiday services and not know what anything means. And that's a fail on our part. So every year they learn new melodies. Every year they learn new reasons why we do something, new history of the prayers. That's what a family service, really what all services should be. But one that's geared, maybe all services should be geared to families, whether it's, grandma and grandpa and whatever, aunts and uncles, or even communities, friends. Imagine blessing your friends. I've never done that, but I think that would be super powerful, right?
Yeah.
And yes, we like to watch the kids do something, learn something, but also adults love to learn to read Torah. They love to participate. They love to speak from the bima. Many of them, who knew? It's just, are we opening the door? Are we taking the stage? And is that really what Judaism wants us to do? Judaism is so centered in the home.
Yeah.
And I think we've taken that over. We need to go back. We need to go back to that. So, for example, a sukkah in a synagogue can be really nice. I have fond memories, I think we all do, of beautiful sukkahs in synagogues. But in my community, we built 12 sukkot in people's houses.
Yeah, we did the same. Do you remember, what was that show, Extreme Makeover Home Edition, where they would move that bus? So we would do the same thing. We would get all of the materials. We had a crew of builders. We'd go to people's homes. We'd build them a sukkah. And then two things had to happen. Number one, they had to promise. We gave them the instructions. They had to promise they'd build it again next year, and we'd come help if they need. And number two, they had to invite someone over to share in their sukkah. They didn't have to pay for anything. But those are
Yeah.
the two things they had to
I
promise.
think I think it's a good idea. We did it a little differently. We did this by classes because this was at the beginning of the year. It was a way of getting to know the people in your class. But we had the parents build the sukkah. Well, the kids made decorations. The mothers usually strung fruit. And I'm saying that I realize what a sexist thing it is, but my school, as you know, was at Harvard, and these people just didn't get to do hammers and nails and things like this very often, and they kind of wanted to do that, but we so that we would build a sukkah one week, and the next week we would come back and have a meal there, and during the week it was the families. And I have a thing about paper chains. I truly hate paper chains and sukkahs. They get wet.
Yeah.
I just don't like them. I have a prejudice. I know a lot of people do. So I went to one of these buildings because we had the staff at the building. And the kids were building the longest paper chain I've ever seen. From the third floor, it was coming down the steps. And I started being, nasty about it. I said, "We have these great things for you kids to build. Why are you doing paper chains?" And the little girl whose house it was said, "This is our sukkah. This is
Oh,
our sukkah, and you can't, tell us how we can decorate
lo
our
bashama.
sukkah."
You got lo bashamayim t, right?
I
The Torah
did.
is not in heaven. Yeah.
I did. So, and I said, "Yeah, I wouldn't think of telling you. You're absolutely right because it's your sukkah." So they grow up thinking this is their sukkah. I don't think you can do better than that in
Yeah.
family education, right?
Wow.
You just can't do better than that. And then some people who learn with me are tell me that the rabbi says, "No, we can't. We have to have the sukkah in the synagogue. We want people to come into the synagogue. We
Right.
want Havdalah in the synagogue. Havdalah is also something that could be at homes." I'm not saying we shouldn't ever come into the synagogue like high holidays. We should definitely not be at home. We should definitely be in the synagogue. There's a place for a Hanukkah party for a community, right? I mean, there's a place for things that belong in the synagogue. All of this is part of this question that we're trying to figure out about the future of the synagogue, right? So we have to give up a couple of things. One is this idea that Jewish education belongs to us and not to the parents, not to the family. That idea has to go to be successful. And the other, that not everything has to happen in the synagogue, that some things are meant to happen in the home. And how can we strengthen the hand of the parents so that they can do at home what belongs at home?
That's so powerful. The notion that we're going to have to give some things up as
We're going to have
Judaism.
to give up some power, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Some power that we've taken to ourselves. And I think that women coming into the rabbinate will help this. But what I've noticed is that rabbis today are being trained almost in a mold. This is what a Reform rabbi does. This is what a Reform rabbi says. This is what a conservative and Orthodox, it's all the same. And we do those things the way that our teachers did them. So I think when people had to pivot to Zoom, they really they pivoted the method, but they just tried so hard to make the product be the same. Now, I know that there's some pressure from the congregation to make the product the same, but there are ways. For example, in Zoom, there are rooms that you can divide people up. You can have discussions in which you don't hear all of it. It's happening in the Zoom rooms, right? And I think everybody likes those if you give them enough time and you know how to focus them properly. Um, so I think if when we go back to services in person, when I go back to doing them in person, I think I'm going to make Zoom rooms happen in person. You know,
Yep.
I think it's a really good idea, and so I think we have to learn from all the different parts of this, but the world is not the same. And in Judaism, this is such an important idea because we move from one country to another, we move from one language to another, we change the food to match the local ingredients. We have to change how we're doing American Judaism because it isn't working. It isn't working for many people, and it is working for some people, right?
Right.
I acknowledge that it is
Right.
working for some people, but I think that a community can have a discussion about this and see what are the pieces that are working for them and what are the pieces that aren't working for them. But very often communities don't have those discussions because nobody wants to hear what it is that they want to take away from us as clergy and as educators.
I'm a I tend to be a break it and rebuild it fast kind of guy, which is not necessarily the best when it comes to
Yeah,
being a Jewish leader. But you were just making me think that when Yochanan ben Zakkai, when the Rebbeim of the post temple world were creating this new Judaism that was going to become, it wasn't the goal was not to say what you were doing was wrong or bad or outdated or old-fashioned. In fact, there was so much energy spent in honoring the past. The entire Musaf service on Shabbat
right.
is simply a way to honor something that we don't do anymore.
Yeah, enough
And I
of that.
don't, right. And so I think
Yeah,
that part of this process that we're all going to have to go through is how can we honor what has worked for people? How can
yeah,
we honor those pieces that and still do work for some people and not let that stop us from discovering what's next?
right. And it's really true for people. Like I was doing services in a new place, happened to be 2001, which was quite a
Mm.
terrible thing to be doing with a new community. But a woman came up to me on Yom Kippur morning and she said, Rabbi, you'll never believe what happened last night. She said, the cantor sang a different melody to Adon Olam. I can't, I
God,
couldn't go back there. I couldn't go back there. God forbid, right? But I understood that she couldn't sing Adon Olam with all those words without knowing that melody. David, I'm not sure you have sound. I can't hear you. So I said,
sorry. Yeah, I'm nodding and I'm just agreeing with everything you're
okay.
saying.
So, so I understand what's important, but I also understand that gently people can be taught that a new melody for this or that or the other thing is fine and good and important and powerful. You know, um, and there's one other really big thing that I think as clergy and educators we have to give up, and that is our lock on knowledge. We can't be the ones who know. I mean, maybe we're going to know more than other people. I don't know, but it would be my goal that that not be the case, that if I spend enough time with a group of people, that they will know a lot. And that we have to go back to our roots of learning as being the coolest thing there is about being Jewish. Learning is the coolest thing about being Jewish. I'm involved in a interfaith group of women that has met now for 15 years, and we study our different religions. But what's really cool about being Jewish is the learning. And where are we teaching kids how much fun it is to learn as a Jewish hobby? Because learning is a Jewish hobby. As you know, there are many institutions now online and in person where adults are going to study. In Israel, it's practically a given that you put the kids to bed and you go learn. And because it's fun, because it's interesting, because that's who we are as a people. So learning text, whichever text it is something that should be a part of the education of all of our children, whether they're super Orthodox, super Reform, or everything in between. And we have completely not done that. We have removed that from the experience that most children have in Jewish education. And that's just wrong. It's one of the things I'm willing to say is wrong.
Yeah.
Um, and children can learn any text. I've taught text to children for many, many years, and there's literally nothing that I wouldn't teach them that's in the Bible. There are some things I suppose I'd rather wait and hope I don't get to right away, but that's my problem. When you
Right.
when you give it over to the kids, they go, okay,
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
And they have questions, and they can learn, and as soon as they can read, they can handle text in English. I understand that if we're not day school educators, excuse me, day school educators, chances are they're learning English, but um, you know, I'm a big fan of translations that keep the text, which is what my
I
husband
wonder
does.
why. Yeah, I
That's
was just gonna.
that's the advertisement of the day. Everett Fox's translations of the Bible allow you to teach in English as if you were teaching in Hebrew, and the kids can do that. But we're teaching Parshat HaShavua, which is basically you can pick anything out of 4 chapters, and you don't have to spend a lot of time teaching it. So, for example, we're going to study the story of Cain and Abel. It's the story of two brothers that fought. Do you fight with your brothers? And then
Right.
you've left the page. And then you've made a picture of brothers getting along with each other, which the kids take home, and nothing's happened. So Jewish school is an afterthought, and Jewish learning that's there for them should be more exciting than what they're doing in 4th grade in their public or private school,
Yeah.
because we have that ability to do that, to inspire kids, and we're not doing that. So,
And
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 for
and
adults too.
yeah, and yet, given all of what you just said, which I'm with you 100%. I don't want people to think that the future is bleak, because there are organizations like New Cage that are teaching us how to do this work better. Can you spend just a couple minutes, because I really want people to go to newcage.org to learn more about what you all are offering. But can you tell us, how is New Cage, and maybe even you, how are you all trying to address some of these deficiencies that you're seeing?
Well, I'm going to talk about the negative for just 1 minute, okay, and say that I am the biggest fan of Jewish educators probably that there is. I believe in them. I see how hard they work. I see how much they care. But their education level is not deep enough very often. And so they're limited in what they can teach because of what they know. Um, and they find things to teach that are fine to teach, but they could be better. They could be deeper. So one of the things that New Cage is doing is trying to raise the level of knowledge, just pure knowledge. So if we're going to talk about Hanukkah, like, let's learn more than one symbol of Hanukkah. Let's learn so that everything we do that's an art project doesn't have a Jewish star on it or a menorah. Like an elephant is a symbol of Hanukkah, an interesting one, or a cod, an olive oil container is a symbol of Hanukkah. There's a story of Hanukkah that's meaningful. So if people knew more, we feel that they would do more. But the truth is that they face opposition from their employers because they're not being paid well enough, because they're not being given enough time to teach or to learn, or being given professional development. You're seeing pictures here on the right of a New Cage conference and all the things that go on there. We usually have 500 educators from 45 states and other countries who come, and they're spending days learning and participating in the arts. You see how important the arts are to learning, and people come and share, and we have a place where people of all denominations, you can see Orthodox, everybody all in one place when you look at these pictures. But the arts are very important because if we don't support the arts, they don't exist. It's our ability to bring these people, these traveling artists, musicians, all kinds of arts into our schools, which also takes money, which sometimes isn't available these days. So it's really important um, to that first of all that people in the field know each other. It's really important that because they can help each other, they can uh, be a resource for each other, they can be someone to go to when things aren't going well. But there needs to be education of the lay leaders also. Very often, the lay leaders who are in charge of Jewish education are given a budget and they're told, here, you have X number of dollars that you can spend on Jewish education, instead of it going the other way, instead of the educator saying, I need this much money to create a really good school for your children. That conversation almost never happens. So we're trying to teach educators how to ask for what they need for their schools, which is very difficult for them to do. We're trying to educate, we're not there yet, but we'd like to be able to educate the lay leaders also. But we're just deepening and deepening and deepening what they know about Judaism, what they know about the subject matter that they're teaching. We want them to have fun because life as a Jewish educator can be pretty discouraging. You know, the family that leaves, the kids that don't come, all this sort of thing, the time being cut from what you're needing to do. So by reinvigorating them, we call it rejuvenation. Um, every summer, it sends them back into the classroom, being positive and looking for new and better ways to do what they're trying to do. So we're on the way, but we're not being supported enough in any way to feel 100% positive about what we're doing. But if you haven't been to a New Cage conference, or if you've been to a Cage conference and haven't been back to a New Cage conference, please come. This is how we create a field of Jewish education. This is how people who are, you saw the exhibit area a second ago. This is how people who have ideas have a marketplace for their products. And so they create new and better ideas. Look, they're not just singing, they're not having a concert, they're learning songs that they can go back and teach their kids. Um, they're learning storytelling at New Cage. They're learning all kinds of ways to reimagine Jewish education for the 21st century, which is what we need to do. That's the important thing that we're trying to do, and to bring young educators into the field. So we're working very hard. One of our main objectives is to bring teenagers, college students, and young educators to the conference and give them training during the year as well to see this as a wonderful field. I bet you would say the same thing as me, David, that this has been a wonderful job. This has been a job where we find ourselves doing varied things, things of the heart, things that matter to us, that we feel like it was interesting. It was an interesting job. It was a job that allowed us to be creative, deeply creative. But it didn't give the kind of kavod or respect back to us that we deserved for what we were doing for the Jewish community. The Jewish community is dependent on Jewish education for its strength. For it's not going to solve the problems that we see in intermarriage. If it's a problem, it's not going to solve that. There are problems we can't solve that are bigger than us. But learning and knowledge is something, and love for what we're doing and support for families, that's something we can do. And we want young people who love Judaism, who've learned from us to love Judaism, to consider it as a field that they can work in. And to do that, going forward, we're going to have to make sure that the working conditions, salary and benefits, match up to bringing the best of the best and the best of the brightest into the field. And that's what lay leaders need to be talking about now. I'm sure mostly educators and clergy are going to see this, but I hope that they'll show these programs that you're doing to their lay leaders as well, because this is a conversation that needs to be happening in the American Jewish community today.
Amen. Oh, thank you. I'm so grateful to you for the years of leadership, of visionary teaching and leading and inspiring that you've given the Jewish world. And I share your hope that people will listen to your call and will act on it. I'm so grateful for your time today, Rabbi Koller-Fox.
Thank you, David, and I'm grateful to you for doing this. I think it's so important to have these discussions on a synagogue level, on a family level, and on a national level.
Amen. Amen. Friends, thank you for joining me. I want to let you know that next week, Rabbi Elise Wachterman is going to be joining me. She is a leading representative from the Reconstructionist movement, and I'm just so excited to have her. I'm so honored that Rabbi Cherie Koller-Fox joined me today. It's all starting right now, my friends. It's all starting right now, and these are the leaders that are making it happen. Have a wonderful rest of the week. I'll see you next time. Bye.